Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us for today's webinar here. We hope everyone is both safe and healthy at home and that everyone's kind of weathering this booking storm that we've been seeing over the past few weeks here. So today we'll be talking about some of the different data tools we've released recently, some different strategies for tracking market recovery in your area, and yeah, just giving you some more tools to hopefully get you through to the other side here. So before we dive in and get started introducing the panel here, if you can't currently hear me, there should be an option that says dial in on your screen. Make sure to click that to get audio to start coming through. And then as we go through the presentation, first we'll start with some kind of talks by the team here, and then we'll open up to some questions. So if you do have any questions, use that Q&A button at the bottom there to type those in, and we'll get those answered later on here. And then if you do have any questions that are specific to your location or your account, please send those into support@pricelabs.co. Then again, we will be recording this webinar and you'll receive a recorded version a couple hours after we finish here. So if you do have to leave early for any reason, that's totally fine. That'll be in your inbox later today here. So first and foremost, I'd like to introduce the panel here. With me today, I have Anurag Verma, who's one of our co-founders here at PriceLabs, and David Witalka, who is one of our data scientists behind a lot of the tools we'll be showing off today. Awesome. And then myself, Oliver Marzinski, I work in business development here at the company. So the agenda today, we'll be going over some of the COVID resources we've been kind of sharing recently here. We'll show you some updated booking trends from kind of the market as a whole to give you an idea of what's been going on in different regions around the world. And then we'll have David go over some of the market dashboards, that new tool you might have seen in PriceLabs recently that lets you get more granular on your area's data here before opening up the floor to Q&A. So for Q&A, we wanted to keep this mostly focused around kind of questions about the market dashboard. So that's kind of where we'll be starting. And then afterwards, if there's any pricing related questions, and if we still have time, we might move over to those later here. So first thing to cover, COVID-19 resources. So in the registration, we had a few questions coming in about different pricing strategies, what's going on in the market, how can I adjust different things, what's the algorithm doing? So a lot of that has been kind of extensively covered in our COVID-19 resources here. So you can access this page at pricelabs.co/coronavirus. So this is kind of where we've compiled all of our data from the past few weeks. So we have some global data trends here where you can see trends broken down country by country, some US state data. Then most importantly, I'd say, are our recent blogs. So we've been putting a lot of effort into these, kind of giving you a lot of information on frequently asked questions that cover our algorithms response and different things like that, different actions you can be taking to kind of mitigate the impact of coronavirus here. So I would highly recommend checking out all of these blogs, some great resources there. Then also we have our webinars page here. So we've been busy recording quite a few webinars over the past few weeks. So especially these early ones. So this one from earlier in April, and then this one down here, those talk kind of in depth about pricing strategy while demand is low. So I definitely recommend checking these out if you have any questions there. And then finally, industry resources, some great different news feeds on how different industry partners are handling coronavirus and the trends that they're seeing there. So for your reference again, that is hello.pricelabs.co/coronavirus. And I will be typing that into the chat just to give you that tool as a reference here. Perfect. But now we will have Anurag take us through some of the updated booking trends we've been seeing in the past few weeks here.
All right, thanks, Oliver, and hi, everyone. Thanks for joining in. We have presented these charts in the past webinars as well, and we've been tracking those over and over. And like Oliver mentioned, one of the blogs also has these charts, which we keep updating. Since we last did this webinar about 2 weeks back, one of the new things that we have started noticing is, at least in the US, if you look at this chart, actually before we go in, a lot of new folks have joined in, so I should explain what this chart is tracking. On the x-axis here, it's tracking each booking date. So we started this chart at the beginning of March, and we are saying, okay, at the beginning of February, sorry. And we're saying how many bookings used to come in amongst listings that use PriceLabs. So this is aggregated across all properties used by that use PriceLabs. Not the top chart is North America, and then the bottom chart is Europe. So you'll see that overall the volume of bookings clearly has dipped since mid-March in both North America and Europe. The graph has been split into different colors by lead time. So lead time, most of you are going to be familiar with it, but for those who are not, is how far out are people booking. So in normal times, we used to see that at the bottom, you see this dark green, gray kind of a color, which is same day bookings. So there was a thin sliver of same day bookings. Light blue was bookings made within the next week. Then dark blue is 7 to 14 days out. Orange was 15 to 30 days out, and so on and so forth. One of the biggest things that we saw was, yes, all the volume dropped, but then this dark green gray of same day bookings, that actually stayed pretty consistent. So there wasn't much of a dip in same day bookings. The same week bookings dipped by about 50%. But really what disappeared more or less was bookings that were being made far out. So bookings that were being made more than 7 days out, which is very understandable because nobody was traveling. Nobody was booking for anything that was not immediate and essential in some ways. And people were definitely not making plans to go on holidays a month out or 2 months out, or even much farther out. Now, what we have started seeing in the last 2 weeks is, and you'll see that in that green box in the North America chart, is some of those bookings for far out dates have started reappearing. So the same day bookings are still holding steady. The same week bookings are beginning to increase, but bookings more than a week out that had become that very, very thin sliver is now beginning to look a little more meaningful. You can kind of differentiate between different colors there, at least now, which is a good sign, at least for North America. Unfortunately, we are not seeing this happen in Europe yet, hoping that things get better there as well soon. Now, these are aggregated at a continent level. This doesn't mean that every location in North America and every location in Europe is seeing the same things. We have spotted, and David is going to talk a little bit more about that and how you can spot your own region. In the market report tools or dashboards that we have created, we have seen there are some countries in Europe that are beginning to pick up already. So that's something that you should keep an eye out on. On the next slide, so this one was breaking it down by lead time. The second big trend that we had seen when this COVID crisis started was, although short-term bookings had dropped drastically, the mid-term bookings, so we are calling these bookings that were between 15 and 60 day long, they actually increased. They didn't just hold steady and their share increased. The total number of bookings that were midterm actually increased. And again, this could have been for a lot of different reasons. It could have been people who were stuck in a different country and they needed a place to stay. This could be people who were just essential workers who moved to a new city that needed their help. But we are beginning to see that, we almost knew that this is probably not going to be an everlasting trend. And we are beginning to see some slight dip in it. So we'll keep tracking this to find out what needs to be done from a pricing strategy, if this is going to steady out or if it is going to be going back to the normal levels. Then depending on that, our strategy might change a little bit. Now, based on both of those trends, although far out bookings have started picking up, they're still not anywhere close to the levels they were at. And even the last minute bookings are not, they're still not fully recovered. So not far from fully recovered. So our advice on what to do has not changed as much yet. And same thing on our algorithm side, we haven't made further adjustments. We still are recommending to go aggressive on length of stay discounts. So if more people are now looking for longer stays and there is a lot more inventory because shorter stays are just not happening, then it might be beneficial uh, to compete a little more aggressively for these longer stays to try and sort of uh, regain whatever revenue you can in some ways. The next one is last minute discounts, and this is again ties back to the the fact that we don't know how soon things will recover at this point. Even if counties and countries and states have started opening up in some places, people might not be as open to booking just yet. So we are still saying hold your prices more than 60 days out, and then within 60 days, when we know that okay, uh, the previous levels are not going to be achieved, you might need to start giving some amount of or fairly aggressive discounts. So if you use PriceLabs, then we have something, we had built a setting called, we just called it coronavirus, where depending on how each listing is performing over the next 60 days, it will try to get more or less aggressive with the discount. So if you're completely empty, it will try to bring the prices close to your lowest prices only for the next 60 days. It won't impact things outside of 60 days. To say, hey, if you're completely unbooked, if your calendar is open, let's try and get you something. And on as you start getting booked, it will automatically bring the prices back to normal as things start getting back to normal. That setting is also important if you are uh, if you look forward to the recovery in some ways. So we again don't know how quickly it will happen, but what you don't want to happen is if you are in a place where recovery does happen very quickly, you don't want to be sitting at the bottom prices because those didn't get updated. This setting will, as bookings start coming in, it will automatically update the rates. The next two are just free, like get a little more flexible on your cancellation policies. It's a in some ways a touchy topic. Everybody has varied opinions on those right now. At least in our opinion, the one segment that doesn't have varied opinions is probably your guests, who would want some amount of flexibility when booking something, to say, hey, we don't know, we are booking right now for fall, but what if things haven't improved by fall? We want some flexibility in being able to maybe just, maybe not fully refund, but even if you allow them to move the dates later on, that itself is a big help to anybody booking. It, it 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 helps you get something on the books rather than just sitting empty, given how much more supply there is and how people are generally wary of traveling right now. Fewer restrictions. So this is again something to consider. So price is one lever that you use when doing revenue management. The other one is restrictions, and there are two sides to it. On one side, for last minute bookings, you know that okay, right now a lot of calendars are sitting empty. Even if somebody books short stays last minute, it's okay in some ways. You're going to, that short booking will get over soon, so you're not going to be blocking your calendar forever. And on the flip side, if you are trying to target or attract longer bookings that are happening more, uh, if you do get a 2-night stay somewhere in July, then it kind of means that you can't take a 7-night or 14-night stay in July anymore. So from that perspective, it's useful to be a little more strategic about minimum stays and not just have a blanket minimum stay. And in PriceLabs, you're allowed to have 4 different levels. So you can set a super far out minimum stay, and then far out, and then your default, and then the last minute. So we generally recommend, even in normal times, we recommend using those based on how your market looks and what your booking data shows, to not take too many short bookings 7 months out, so and then not be able to book dates around it. Instead, try and get longer bookings far out, and then fill up the dates around it as dates get closer. But that becomes even more important right now. So these are some things that we are asking everyone to look into and review. And if you have any questions around whether you're setting it up the right way, or whether what you have done is useful, is going to be useful, shoot us an email at support@pricelabs.co, and someone on our team can look into that one.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Anurag. And now we will have David take over the screen share here and go over the new market dashboards we released just last week here.
Let me just share my screen here. Okay, so yeah, we recently released market dashboards. So if I log in, let me see this new tab right up here called Market Dashboards. And we're hoping this tool allows you to better see what's kind of going on in your neighborhood and your market. So when you open up the screen, you'll see any dashboards you have already created. If you haven't created any, it will be blank. To create a new market dashboard, just right over here to this blue button, you'll be prompted for the address where you want your report to be centered. You can probably start with, you want to just put in your listing address. I'm going to use an address in Nashville, Tennessee, as it is an interesting market to look at right now. And I'm going to use a 1 kilometer radius as it's fairly standard. When you're choosing your radius, you want to consider your area, essentially your density of area. If you're in a sparsely populated area, maybe you want to increase your radius. If you're in a very dense area, you might want to decrease it. And specifically, if you look here, so this is after clicking next, you can see where your circle is. And any listing that falls inside this, we will be adding to our data for you. Up to 1,000 listings. So I'm pretty happy with this. It covers downtown Nashville. So let's click next. And we're just going to be gathering some data real quick. Generally, this doesn't take too long. And yeah, so it's already done. And we have grabbed 800 listings in that area. That's a pretty good number. We go up to 1,000. If you're seeing 1,000 plus listings here, we generally recommend that you shrink your radius in order to make sure your market report is as relevant to you as possible, as local as possible. If it's below around 300, we recommend increasing your radius generally, but you're free to do whatever you wish. So we can just name the dashboard. I don't know. Let's go with Nashville webinar. And then you can choose the currency that you want the report to use. Because Nashville is in the US, I will stick with US dollars. You can click generate report. And then if you refresh your page, you can see it got added and it's in progress. So we're still putting it together, but it has been processed. I have already, pulled up this dashboard though. I created it yesterday. So let's take a look at what it would show you. The first thing here, we have a summary table of the statistics. So we break it down in terms of the bedroom count. All listings, studio, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, and this one 3+ bedrooms. For your own market, you might see slightly different bedroom categories. We just break them down into sizable bins. So you might see 4 to 5 bedrooms, 7+. It all depends on your own market. Here you can see the count in each category. So here's the 800 listings in all, 117 studio listings, 453 1 bedroom, 186 2 bedrooms, and 44 3 bedrooms plus. We can also see what the median price is for each category, and then the median length of stay over the last 30 days. So Nashville is a very weekend-heavy market, so it makes sense that it's around 3. People are probably staying Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Then we can also see the median lead time over the past 30 days. Keep in mind, there's probably some restrictions here so that people couldn't book immediately. They had to wait until after the booking, and that's likely why these numbers are so high right now. The next chart we see is the occupancy chart. So the blue line is the percent of listings that are booked for that day, this given stay date. Here we see a spike in the occupancy, likely an event. Similar with this one, see events here. You can also see the day of week trend is very strong in Nashville. It's every weekend has higher occupancy in general. This green line is percent of new listings that have received a booking for this date in the past 7 days. So that sounds a little bit complicated. All it is saying is that for these dates, in the past week, this is the percent of listings that have seen a booking for it, which means that the occupancy here, because the new booking is greater than cancellation, is probably going up. It's how the blue line is likely moving or has moved in the last week. Similarly, the red line is cancellations in the last week. So again, it's a percentage of listings that have seen a cancellation for this given date, and it is indicating of the blue line going down. So for instance, out here on this weekend, August 5th and August 4th, we were seeing more cancellations for that date than booking, and it's fairly far out. Doing some digging, we found that that corresponds to a fashion week in Nashville, actually, which is kind of interesting. It hasn't been canceled yet, but people are starting to cancel their trips for it. Similarly, this August or July 31st and August 1st, I started to see some more new bookings. So the occupancy for this date, you would expect to see go up. The next graph we see is prices. The 75th percentile is the green line, the median or 50th percentile is the blue line, and the 25th percentile is the red line. Again, you see this heavy day of week trend with weekends being more expensive. Everyone's raising their prices on weekends. If you were having a listing in Nashville, this would tell you you should also be raising your prices on weekends. You can also see events or what the listings think are events. So here people have risen prices higher than they've normally done. Similarly here. And you can actually reference back up to the occupancy graph and showing even though people have increased prices for here, the occupancy hasn't really increased. If it is an event, it's likely not a popular event that a lot of people are looking to go to right now. So maybe you don't want to increase your prices as much as the market is increasing their prices. This event out here actually does have a bit higher occupancy than its neighbors. It is pretty far away. Probably you want to adjust your prices to be in line with the market here. This spike happens to be January 1st, so it's the New Year's. People have risen their prices. Very tiny occupancy increase. People just haven't started booking for New Year's, but probably don't want to, you want to probably agree with the market with how much you're increasing your prices. The next graph is new bookings that have occurred in the last 7 days. And there's been some confusion over what this means. But if we take a look at this March 8th date, we see that 95 bookings have come in the last week. So that means the 8th bookings that happened on today, the 8th, 7th, 6th, all the way back to the 1st. Any bookings that happen in that time period get added, summed up into this column. So it's a 7-day window that we're adding them for. And that's simply because if you do a 1-day window, how many bookings came in on that day, it's very noisy. It's hard to see overall trends. And this graph kind of shows you that, mid-April, there wasn't a lot of bookings. It has since increased a little, but then it's gone back down and it's on the rise recently. And then it's kind of falling again right now. Probably just with all the uncertainty that's going around. The next chart is lead time trends. So these charts are always going to be out of 100%. So this is of bookings that happen. Same thing where we're looking at bookings for the last 7 days for the date. So each one of these columns essentially can be placed on one of these columns for the number of bookings that have happened. But this graph gives you a chance to see some of the lead time trends early on in April or mid-April. We saw mostly far out bookings increasing and kind of staying off. And then recently we've seen more and more kind of less noticeable or smaller lead time bookings happening or coming back. So we see mostly, 14 to 30 days out, a strong increase from at least early in April. And also with the 30 to 60 range as well. Keep in mind though, that some of this fluctuation can be a result of the number of bookings actually changing. I'll get into that more with this length of stay graph. So of the bookings that happened, how long have people stayed? Since mid-April, the number of 2 days or fewer bookings have increased. And what's really increased lately is the 14 to 30 day length of stay bookings. But again, it's right here in this end of the graph, which corresponds to a kind of steep fall off in new bookings. So it's a little hard to say whether these are more of the 14 to 30 days or whether these have stayed steady and it's just that everything else has fallen off for number of, just like raw number of 14 to 30 day length stay. So that's the current market dashboard. As we've kind of gone over, it's a little hard to tell right now how these graphs kind of relate to the number of bookings happening. And so that's something we're looking to improve. So if we go back to the slides, we can we'll look at how we're planning on improving the market dashboard in the future.
Awesome. Thanks so much, David. And a quick kind of clarification on these dashboards. Are these purely a snapshot of kind of what has been going on when you ordered it, or kind of are they updated on a rolling basis? That's been asked a few times here.
Yeah, so they're updated every day. And that means all the data is refreshed. The whole market, it's essentially rebuilt from scratch. So if the market has changed from day to day, it will be completely rebuilt. You'll see it. New days will be added to the bottom charts, which look in the past. So you'll get more data, you'll get refreshed data. Yeah.
Awesome. Definitely. So something to keep checking back in on, keep tracking those signs of recovery here. So as David was mentioning here, market dashboards, definitely a tool that we're kind of still building out, new features coming up here. So some of the features, in addition to just making the graphs and charts a lot more clear, that we're kind of looking at adding in the next few weeks, include a map of all listings, kind of color-coded by average price, so showing you where the different price changes are in neighborhoods around your city here. Showing you what cleaning fees and other fees other hosts are charging in your area. So that's a question that comes up a ton. How to set your cleaning fee, how to compare that to other hosts. So something to look into here. Which amenities are getting booked most? So are places with parking or with pools or AC, do those factor into what listings are getting most bookings? And then also length of stay by lead time, and then actual historic occupancy. So you can see, hey, in previous years, what has maybe occupancy been here? So we'll launch a quick poll just to get a little bit of feedback on if some of those new features are helpful, and then just some initial feedback on some of these features that we have worked on here. Are those useful? Are those not useful? We'd love to hear. And yeah, know what you think here. So let us know in that little description here, and we'll start implementing those changes into the graphs and things that you see here. All right, lots of poll responses coming in. So we will flip over to a quick Q&A now, starting with market dashboards, going over any questions that you might still have about any of these features that we just talked about here. So first question that's come up a few times, I think this would be a good one for you to address here, Anurag. Talking about the source of the data. So where's it coming from? How do we know that it's good data? Kind of all those things here.
Yeah, absolutely. So this data, the data that I showed in the very beginning, that was coming from our aggregated reservations data for listings that use PriceLabs or properties that use PriceLabs. The data that David was showing, pretty much covers the entire world. So if you can put in any address and get information there, which means that it comes out of scanning different OTAs. We right now do just Airbnb, but we also plan to add Vrbo very soon. Now, what we do there, important thing to note is what we do there is we are constantly scanning different properties on Airbnb. So when certain dates disappear from the calendar, we know what dates disappeared and what price they used to be before they went out, which helps us figure out how long the length of stay was, what the price was before it got booked. We also have built a lot of algorithms to figure out what's a real booking versus what's a block day. For example, I think in UK, we saw that pretty much everything was blocked by the government or by Airbnb till May 9th. Basically, Airbnb was, or not just Airbnb, different OTAs were not taking bookings, which meant all the calendars looked completely blocked out. And we were able to sort of say, hey, this does not like that. This kind of an action does not look like real bookings in the area, and we were able to remove those. That said, we always ask users to look at those charts with a very critical eye to say, hey, is everything looking fine or is it not looking fine? Another important thing to note, even though we are only showing getting data from Vrbo right now, from Airbnb right now, that doesn't mean that the bookings that we spot are only coming from Airbnb. Because even if it was a direct booking on your website or from Vrbo or from booking.com, the dates on the calendar in Airbnb are also going to be taken off, which is fairly important, because then we are, regardless of where the booking is coming from, we are spotting those happening in the calendars around the world. Oliver, if you don't mind, can I share my screen?
Yes, definitely.
Right, cool. I wanted to show a little bit of what I meant with looking at the graphs with a critical eye in some ways. And I want to give an example of Vail, Colorado, which it's a report I have open. So here, I think in most of Colorado, and it might depend from county to county, short-term rentals have been are not allowed to operate till the end of May. So if you look at our charts for Vail right now, you will see that there is no cancellation activity happening till the end of May. And very, very little booking activity. And you'll see right after May ends, a ton of people have started canceling what they had previously booked. So in the last week, it looks like a lot of this blue line used to be much higher last week. And since then, there have been a lot of cancellations and very, very few bookings. So this gives you a sense of like, even in markets where there are broad trends which are sort of distorting data a little bit, we are able to get useful information out. The other thing here is it looks like the occupancy is 20% here. If you purely looked at the calendars, it will probably look like 100% is blocked because just nothing is available to be booked. What we do there is, because we were spotting these before all these blocks happened, we are still seeing, okay, there were bookings that were done before the mass blocks were put in place by the OTAs or by the counties. So we are still able to spot some of these trends. Some of this could also be month-long bookings, which are still allowed. So short-term rentals are not allowed, but people are still allowed to book if it's more than a month long. So if you know your area well, you'll automatically spot some of these trends to be able to figure out, okay, what's useful, what's not useful. So we generally ask our users to always, any data that you're seeing, always look at it with a very, very critical eye to make sure, yeah, it makes sense and it's going to be useful or not. Yeah, sorry.
Perfect. No, definitely. Great. So next question that's come up a few times here is whether the data that we're showing, does that include different cleaning and OTA fees? And if not, is there currently a good place to kind of find that information for how people are charging those and how that affects your kind of final price that guests are seeing?
I can take that. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. No, so the prices that you see right now on our reports or dashboards, those are the calendar rates of what people put on Airbnb, for example. And depending on how different people have set up Airbnb, they might or might not include OTA fees, because you can either have the fees be on the host side or on the guest side. We are like Oliver, you showed, we are planning to do a separate section on these dashboards, which will go into different fees, like what kind of cleaning fees are people charging, what kind of cancellation policy or cancellation fee are people charging, what kind of extra guest fees people are charging. So we are planning on adding a lot more information about fees, so to make these more holistic. So I haven't seen the poll results yet, but I'm assuming it's going to be something that will be useful for everyone. Was that the only question, or?
That was the the question
Sorry,
asked
yeah.
here, definitely. Yeah, and then I guess the second half of that was where to kind of currently find different cleaning fees and things like that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, right now, one way is to just go on Airbnb or Vrbo and spot check a few. Yeah, we are hoping that we'll be able to add like a lot more aggregated distribution of cancellation fees and things like that into these dashboards pretty soon. But yeah, right now you might want to just go spot check a few similar units in your area.
Definitely, yeah. Until we reach that's kind of my go-to, just looking at the comps in the area on Airbnb and seeing kind of what comes out there. Some questions about setting the area that the dashboard is kind of displaying here. So people asking, like, let's say you're on the coast and you purely want to track kind of the thin sliver of properties that are also on the coast, and sometimes their trends are different than what's more inland here. Unfortunately, I don't think that is currently possible. So our radius is currently, a radius around the property. So it'll do kind of a bigger circle here. So no kind of rectangles or ovals are currently possible. Am I correct in thinking that, Anurag?
You are. I'm trying to think if it's on the beach. Although, like, if you can go a little into the ocean and create a circle around it to just get the beach. But the ocean does not have an address, so probably ignore that.
Probably not. In the future, it would be cool, though, to be able to just draw a circle on the map, since I know lots of neighborhoods, either you're along a river, an ocean. So, yes, something we'll definitely look into adding here. Another question here about how we're displaying some of the data here. So when we're looking at future occupancy rate, is this, when we show the graph that's new bookings, is this the percent of the total occupancy for that date? Or is this just a percentage out of 0 to 100? I don't know if I explained that question well enough here.
Can you repeat? I don't think I
totally.
got it. Yeah.
So let's say for a future date, we're showing that the total occupancy is 20%, and then new bookings are showing up as 5%. Does that mean that 5% of all properties got booked on that date, or is that showing that 5% of the 20% got booked on that date here?
Got it. It's showing that 5% of all properties got booked in the last week. So what is now showing as 20% would have shown as 15% for the same date a week back. That 5% change is what happened in the last week.
Perfect. Great. Yeah, good to clarify. If you know what the data is actually saying, that definitely makes it a lot more helpful here.
Right. In some ways, if you want to think about it, the green line of new bookings will always be lower than the blue line of total occupancy.
Definitely. I saw a couple questions here of people saying, hey, my occupancy is surprisingly high. Like, are other people seeing these trends? Is coronavirus actually having an impact on bookings because people are doing so well? In a lot of cases, that's typically the case because you're getting a lot more longer stays. So those tend to fill up your calendar a lot more quickly here, just since there's a lot more kind of longer term bookings going on. But kind of given the data and the small uptick that we have seen on our end, I thought it'd be interesting to launch another poll here just so we can kind of compare results of what other users are seeing here. So this poll is basically asking, have you seen an uptick in bookings in the past week or so? Since that's kind of what our data is hinting at slightly here. And then also just what occupancy did you achieve in April, roughly here, just an estimate, so that we can kind of see how everyone's affected. I know some people are hitting that 90+% occupancy. Some people are still extremely low. So it's definitely kind of a spread across different markets. So that will be interesting to compare. So that poll is live. Please leave an answer and then we'll kind of see what the results are here in a few minutes here. Looking at some other questions. Okay, this is one that's come up a few times. Can the radius of the dashboards be changed after a dashboard is created? David, do you want to take that one here?
Yeah, currently, no, you can't change it after you created it. We're looking into having that where you can change it. And also, I believe if you've truly messed up and you have some awful radius for your area, you can contact support and we can give you another free credit.
Definitely, yeah. We have seen some dashboards popping up with 50-kilometer radiuses, which a little less actionable than your specific neighborhood here.
I would add a correction to that. So even if you choose a 50-kilometer radius, we are going to pick the closest 1,000 listings. So we are in some ways restricting it for you. But if you're in an area with, if you're in a small town with 500 listings and there is a neighboring town which is 10 kilometers away with another 300 listings, then if you put in 50 kilometers, then you might get both the towns, which is probably not what you want. So yes, generally, we would say be a little more restrictive in the radius you put.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And then more questions coming in. We talked a little bit about how we kind of analyze the data, what we're looking for when we're cleaning everything, what we're looking for book dates versus block dates. Some questions coming in on, are we purely seeing block dates from Airbnb? How do we actually see the bookings? Can we give a little more clarification on that, since that is a little bit confusing on, you know, where the data is coming from and things like that?
Yeah, so I mean, that's a tricky question. I mean, not a tricky question, it's a tricky process in some ways, right? We look at two kinds of things, and the block dates could come from anywhere and the book dates could come from anywhere. We don't know the source. What we try to do is pattern matching in some ways. Like, we know what real bookings look like because we have a lot of booking data, and we know what a lot of block dates look like. So for example, I can give 2 or 3 very quick examples. Like, if like 80% of the listings in an area are all having their bookings end on the same date, like long-term bookings, then that's somewhat of an indication that, yeah, it's probably not all the guests deciding that they want a month-long stay ending on the same date. It's probably a block date. Similarly, if we are seeing very, very long stays happen very far out into the future, usually people book or block their calendars out very far out if they're not sure if they want to take guests during that time yet. Or for example, we know that, okay, very few people are booking that kind of a stay that far out in this region, and then we'll take those out. So it's not looking at the exact source, it's trying to do pattern matching to figure out what looks like a booking versus what looks like a block date, not just at a listing level, but at the area level.
Definitely, yeah. And that would kind of partially explain why, if your area is close to bookings currently and you're still seeing, let's say, 20% occupancy, that's some of that data cleaning things that you just have to watch out for in the data. So that doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, 20% of people in your area are still taking bookings. Those might be people where cancellations came in, but since they were already block dates, our system just couldn't register those. Questions coming in on how the actual number of listings has changed in areas. And I'm kind of curious to hear, let's say if there's a drop in listings in your area, so people start pulling their properties off of Airbnb, will that be updated in the charts, or will those listings just kind of show as, not booked for certain dates here?
So currently, this is a useful question because it's something we have been trying to think about. Currently, we look at active listings, sort of active listings right now in some ways, and say what are the trends we are seeing in those active listings. One of the charts that I don't know, in the polls that Oliver put out, one of the things that we are looking to add is also to show how the supply has been changing from the previous month to this month, for example, to be able to better guide some of these changes. Like if supply has dropped by 10% or 20%, and I'm not saying it has, I'm just saying if it has, and you spot that, it might tell you something about, okay, if the demand has dropped but the supply is also dropping, then maybe for your property the prices don't need to go down. But if supply is holding and the demand has dropped, then it tells you something about, okay, there are going to be fewer bookings because there's just now more supply. I don't have a ready answer to whether it has actually reduced or not, but it is something we are looking to add.
Definitely.
Like a monthly, at a monthly level, like number of active properties or something like that.
That would definitely be helpful, especially as we see, smaller hosts start pulling their listings and different things like that here. Then, since this has come up a few more times, people asking if we're doing booking data from multiple sources, again, purely Airbnb for right now for all of these charts here. Perfect. So it's been a few minutes, so I was hoping to share some of those poll results that we got just to help you compare how others are doing in your area here. So let me share those now. Interesting. Everyone is seeing, or the majority of everyone, slight majority here, is seeing an uptick in bookings in the past week or so. So that's definitely a good sign of recovery here. Good sign that our trends are kind of reflecting what you hopefully see, and hopefully as we see more markets start opening here, I know Florida is opening beaches and things like that, we see kind of more travel slowly start picking up here. And then also in terms of what occupancy did you achieve in April, that is kind of a mixed bag across the board. We're seeing, a lot of people in that 0% occupancy, maybe 10% occupancy. I'm assuming that is potentially due to travel restrictions in your area. So just either a ban on Airbnbs or fewer people are traveling because everyone's locked down here. But then we also do see, some people with that 70, 80, 90% occupancy. So there are still people looking for those longer stays. So yeah, mixed bag. Hopefully we see higher trends of recovery and that these, start trending on the high end here.
Hopefully the first question's answer means that May is going to look a lot better. Yeah.
Definitely. Alrighty, so we are slowly approaching that kind of end of the webinar time here. I know we scheduled this one to be a little shorter than previous ones at just 45 minutes, and I know we've already passed that. More questions are still coming in, so we will follow up on some of them over email here, but if you want to make sure that you get a kind of quick reply here, please do send those over to support@pricelabs.co. Especially if they were questions kind of related to dynamic pricing and what our algorithm's response is and things like that here, since I know we just didn't have time to cover those now, but those have been kind of covered in detail in our previous webinars. So if you go to that coronavirus resource page, those webinars there focus purely on pricing strategy, on our algorithm's response. All of that data is still pretty current. The trends we were seeing back then are still very similar to what we're seeing now. So yeah, definitely give that a look if you have kind of specific questions on what you can be doing, what the algorithm's doing, and different things like that here. And then of course, support@pricelabs.co. We'll try to send you an answer as quick as possible here to any specific questions about your area or any other questions on using these tools here. But any closing remarks from either of you, Anurag and David?
No,
Putting you on
not
the
really.
spot.
Yeah, sorry, wasn't expecting. But no, like Oliver said, for any questions, you generally don't have to wait for a webinar either. Like just email us at support@pricelabs.co. We are very responsive over email, so you'll hear from us within a few hours. And it could be any kind of a question. Like we try to help as much as we can, or point you to the right resources, right? So yeah, we are looking forward to things improving. And yeah, if I just saw somebody joined in, and I wanted to add again that this webinar, the entire thing has been recorded. So you will be getting, if you registered for the webinar, you'll get an email with the recording. Even if you didn't register for the webinar, it will be hosted on our COVID page. So you will be able to listen in to this.
Give us a few hours here, you'll see an email in your inbox of a YouTube link. So that's going to be sent over here. Apologies if there were any confusions with the time change or anything like that here. Perfect. Well, hey, thank you everyone so much for joining us here, and do have a great upcoming weekend. We'll keep you informed as we see different trends in the market, and then once we do send these updated market dashboards, once we start adding things based off of your feedback here, we'll be sending out a newsletter to go check your dashboards and yeah, see what's new here. So yeah, thank you and have a great weekend.